There comes a time in life when noise no longer impresses you, a time when applause loses its meaning, arguments feel like wasted breath, and being seen no longer matters as much as being still. That time for many comes with age, but for the wise it comes with awakening. In a world obsessed with validation, distraction, and proving points, you find power in doing the opposite. You discover that in your silence there is strategy, and in your solitude there is strength. This is the age where your soul retires from chasing and begins to attract. Welcome to the sacred power of focusing on yourself and staying silent. When the fire of youth settles into the calm of age, the real you finally emerges. You begin to realize you owe no one an explanation for choosing peace over chaos. What once felt like isolation now feels like elevation. Silence stops being a punishment and becomes a privilege. The world may still scream for attention, but you choose stillness, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You have fought battles. You have healed wounds they don't even know exist. So now you no longer speak to be understood. You speak only when it feeds your soul. The older you get, the more you understand that people hear only what they are ready to understand, and most aren't ready. So you learn to let them be wrong. You let them misunderstand you. You let them talk, and you let it pass. Because you no longer need to correct the world, you only need to protect your peace. You become your own sanctuary, not seeking validation, but quietly becoming so whole that nothing outside of you can disturb what is within. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean neglecting others, it means no longer abandoning yourself. It means pouring into your own cup first, not out of selfishness, but so that you can give from overflow, not depletion. You are no longer interested in being everything for everyone. You are more interested in being everything for the one person you were responsible for all along. And in that silence, you hear things others cannot. You hear your intuition again. You hear your spirit whispering guidance. You hear the peace between each breath. Life becomes less about noise and more about rhythm, less about proving and more about being. You understand that life isn't a performance, it's a presence. And the more present you are with yourself, the more magnetic you become to everything that matters. You stop chasing things you once thought defined you. Approval, status, reputation, those become empty. What matters now is alignment, peace, purpose. You care less about being liked and more about being light. You care less about being popular and more about being powerful internally. You become immune to drama, immune to praise, immune to criticism, because you are rooted in something much deeper than the world can reach. And in that rooted silence, you begin to manifest. You begin to attract things you never had to chase. Why? Because your energy speaks louder than your words, because your silence becomes a statement, a declaration that you are no longer available for what drains you. You are only available for what elevates you. In this stage of life, you understand that the true battle was never with others, it was always with yourself. And now that you have mastered yourself, no one else holds power over your emotions, your time, or your identity. You protect your peace like a kingdom. You guard your energy like gold, and you realize you were always the prize. So focus on yourself, stay silent. Let the world wonder what you're thinking. Let them assume. Let them project. Let them talk. Because while they're busy watching, you're busy evolving. Quietly, powerfully, unapologetically. This is not the age to explain. This is the age to embody, to retreat into your own wisdom and return to your own center. Let the silence guide you now. Let the stillness become your strategy. Because in the silence of old age, you finally hear the voice of your soul, and it says, you've sadly arrived. You begin to understand that the less you say, the more power you carry. Silence is not retreat, it is a weapon of the wise. When you've seen enough, heard enough, and endured enough, your soul naturally turns inward. You no longer waste breath trying to convince people of your worth. You no longer dilute your spirit trying to be understood. In silence, you watch everything unfold calmly without resistance. You don't speak unless it adds peace. You don't react unless it protects your spirit. The power you once gave to arguments, you now give to meditation. The energy you once poured into noise, you now save for your evolution. Silence builds a fortress around your mind, keeping chaos at bay. When others try to provoke, you simply smile and walk away. You know who you are now. That knowing is louder than any words you could ever say. You become a quiet storm, still on the surface, but deeply powerful beneath. Your silence becomes a reflection of your depth, not your absence. It is the language of those who no longer need approval to feel real. There is no longer a need to explain your silence. You've learned that inner peace is far more valuable than outer noise. You walk away from conversations that once consumed you. You detach from people who only listen to reply, not understand. When you focus on your peace, you stop explaining your decisions. Your journey becomes sacred, not for display. You rise above reactions, choosing clarity over chaos. Your energy is too precious to spend on anything that doesn't nourish your spirit. The world may demand answers, but you choose freedom. And freedom comes from within. You give yourself permission to move in silence, to grow without applause, to bloom in your own time, with your own light. You understand that not every battle is worth fighting, not every voice deserves your attention. Peace is your new priority. You no longer chase validation, you cultivate solitude. And in that stillness, you meet your true self fully. You've stopped expecting people to understand your silence, not because you're hiding, but because you've realized they can only meet you where they've met themselves. Most are not ready for the depth you carry. Most will misread your stillness as distance, not wisdom. You no longer force clarity on people committed to confusion. You let them assume. You let them talk. You let them misunderstand. Because your peace is more important than their perception. You don't waste time correcting those who've already made up their minds. You rise above the need to be right. You allow your actions to whisper what your voice no longer shouts. You move with quiet confidence, not needing the world to clap. You've learned that some people are not ready for truth, and that's okay. Silence protects your spirit from draining debates. It shields you from emotional entanglements. You now let your silence be the boundary they cannot cross. And in that silence, you win. You no longer argue for the sake of being heard. In fact, you don't argue at all. You've learned that peace is worth more than pride. What once kept you up at night now barely gets a second thought. Your silence is not surrender, it's strategy. You realize that not every opinion requires your energy. Not every challenge deserves your engagement. You let things unfold without your interference. You trust that truth reveals itself with time. You focus your attention inward where real power lies. You conserve your emotional energy for your vision, your peace, your healing. People may think you've changed. Let them. The real change is that you've outgrown noise. You've chosen elevation over explanation, and that shift makes you untouchable. You are no longer shaken by external chaos. You have built your peace from within. It's not that you don't care, it's that you've learned to care only for what matters. And peace matters most. You now see that focusing on yourself is the most revolutionary thing you can do. In a world that pulls you in every direction, choosing to return to yourself is divine. You turn inward, not out of selfishness, but out of spiritual survival. You realize no one is coming to save you. No one can walk your path but you. So you stop waiting. You start becoming. You no longer chase the world, you build your own. You pour into your soul like it's sacred, because it is. You invest time in your healing, your growth, your becoming. You choose yourself in a world that taught you to abandon yourself, and that choice changes everything. You realize the more you give to yourself, the less you need from others. Focusing inward becomes your power source. You stop apologizing for prioritizing your peace. You stop explaining your solitude. You don't need anyone's permission to be whole. You are the foundation now. What once felt like loneliness now feels like mastery. Solitude no longer stings, it strengthens. You become your own teacher, your own protector, your own healer. You sit with yourself, not out of boredom, but devotion. You study your patterns. You trace your pain back to its root. You walk yourself through healing that no one else could guide. Alone you rise. In silence you grow. You are no longer afraid of the stillness, you crave it. Because it's in that stillness that you finally hear your soul speak. You discover who you are beyond roles, beyond titles, beyond relationships. You realize that solitude is where you build your true self. You sharpen your mind. You deepen your spirit. You rest in your own presence without needing external validation. What once was empty space becomes sacred ground. You are not isolated, you are in alignment. You are not distant, you are devoted. And in that solitude, you become whole. The need to be seen fades away. What matters now is presence, not performance. You stop playing roles to be accepted. You stop seeking stages to be applauded. You simply live, breathe, and move in your truth. You learn that true confidence isn't loud. It doesn't require spotlights or microphones. It lives in the quiet certainty of who you are when no one is watching. You walk into rooms with invisible strength. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You know who you are, and that's enough. You realize that the loudest ones are often the most unsure, and the quiet ones the most powerful. So you don't chase noise, you don't chase attention. You stay grounded, rooted, unshaken. You let your life be your message. You don't shout it, you live it. And that kind of presence can't be ignored, it's felt. There is a strange magic that begins when you stop chasing. The more you let go, the more flows to you. You learn that chasing only creates resistance, but in detachment you find attraction. You begin to radiate something unspoken, a calm confidence, a centered energy, and the world notices even if you don't try to be seen. You draw in people, opportunities, and blessings not because you demand them, but because you become aligned with them. You become still enough to receive. You no longer hustle for worthiness. You rest in it. You trust that what is meant for you will not miss you. You release the need to force outcomes. You allow. You receive. You align. And in that vibration, the things you once begged for start to find you. You become a magnet not because you chase, but because you became still enough to attract. Once you fall in love with silence, you begin to hear everything. The noise of the world fades and the wisdom of your own spirit begins to rise. You start to notice the subtle nudges, the intuitive whispers, the quiet truths. You realize your soul has been speaking all along. You were just too distracted to listen. But now, with the noise turned down, you can finally hear. Your intuition sharpens. Your decisions become clearer. Your path becomes visible. You begin to move not with anxiety, but with alignment. You start trusting yourself again. You no longer need loud signs. You feel the truth within. Your inner compass becomes louder than any advice. You make space for clarity. You make room for truth. And it finds you, not in chaos, but in calm. In silence, you reconnect with the divine part of yourself that always knew the way. Energy doesn't lie, and now you protect yours like it's sacred currency. You no longer explain your boundaries, you enforce them. You no longer defend your peace, you walk away from anything that disturbs it. Your energy becomes your language. Without saying a word, people feel where they stand with you. You attract what matches your frequency and release what drains it. You don't force connections, you don't beg for understanding. You align and let the rest fall into place. You filter your surroundings through the lens of your spirit. If it disrupts your peace, it's cost expensive. If it costs your energy, it's not worth it. You start choosing silence over conflict, space over chaos, presence over pressure. You learn to read rooms without speaking. You feel energies before words are spoken. And in protecting your own, you teach the world how to treat you without ever raising your voice. You begin to notice how applause fades quickly, but peace lasts longer. You once lived for the approval of others, bending yourself to fit molds that never fit your soul. Now you walk differently. You stand taller not for praise, but from presence. You don't need the world to cheer when you've learned to clap for yourself in silence. You no longer perform for recognition. You operate in alignment, knowing that what is real does not need to be broadcasted. The desire to impress has died, and in its place, a desire to feel whole has risen. You realize that the loudest recognition is often the one that disturbs your inner harmony. So you retreat from performance. You take off the masks. You move according to inner truth, not public opinion. Even when no one is watching, you show up for yourself. Even in quiet rooms, you radiate value. Because your fulfillment is no longer based on being seen, it's based on being soul-fed. That shift is freedom. There's a quiet kind of power in becoming untouchable without ever having to say a word. You no longer shout your progress. You just become it. Your silence becomes your armor. Your glow becomes your revenge. Those who once doubted you now sit confused, unable to understand how you rose without noise. You no longer seek retribution, you rise above the need for it. The best response is your evolution. The best proof is your transformation. You've learned that the loudest revenge is a life fully lived, and that doesn't require public notice. You become unreachable not because you ran, but because you rose. You exist on a frequency that no longer entertains drama, distraction, or doubt. You embody grace under pressure. You carry wisdom in your steps. And while others chase attention, you become a symbol of silent victory. The light you carry now can't be dimmed by the darkness they once threw at you. You realize that the more you try to explain your growth, the less people understand it. So you stop explaining and start embodying. You no longer need to narrate your evolution. You just become the evidence. People sense something different, but they can't quite name it. That's because you've moved beyond the level where words operate. You now operate from presence, not persuasion. You let your actions show what your words once tried to prove. You don't convince, you demonstrate. You don't explain, you elevate. Every room you walk into feels your energy before your voice is heard. You radiate without effort. You influence without speaking, because truth needs no defense. The deeper your alignment, the quieter your spirit becomes. You trust the universe to reveal what you don't need to say. And in doing so, you become an example, not by intention, but by embodiment. That's the kind of power that cannot be faked. It's no longer about being loud or visible. It's about being real. You don't crave popularity when you are finally living in truth. The world teaches you to be known, but wisdom teaches you to be aligned. You've stopped trying to be everywhere. You've started focusing on being fully present right where you are. You walk away from places that no longer reflect your value. You step back from people who treat your soul as optional. In doing so, you make space for a deeper connection to yourself, your purpose, and your peace. The light you now carry wasn't given to you by applause, so it can't be taken away by silence. You shine from within. You don't broadcast your joy, you live in it. You don't announce your healing, you embody it. The more you walk in truth, the less you need others to agree. You realize you were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to understand yourself fully. There's something sacred about choosing to evolve quietly, about rising without needing to be seen. When you stop explaining and start expanding, life begins to shift. You stop leaking energy trying to make others comfortable with your growth. You stop asking for permission to become who you already are. You've grown tired of noise, of drama, of surface level conversation. You want substance now. You want depth and peace and sacred solitude, so you begin to glow differently. You hold yourself differently. You walk like someone who knows the storm they survived. You smile like someone who doesn't need attention to feel alive. Your journey becomes internal. Your fire burns quietly but powerfully. You don't compete, you create. You don't announce, you manifest. You become a mirror to others, showing them what silent strength looks like, because some of the greatest transformations happen without a sound. And now you are the proof.